Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Review. Alrighty everybody, it is time to wrap up my February reading, which of course comes a lot quicker than any of the other months, even though we do have a leap day this year. That is so crazy. Gotta love it. Gotta love a leap day. Add some extra time back into our lives, right? But February was still super productive and my stats are so interesting for this month. I can't believe it. I finally had some 6-star reads. I actually had 2 of them this month from, no surprise, 2 of my favorite authors. So, you know, it's not shocking, but let's go ahead and dive right into this. We are fighting the sun today, so I'm going to keep my videos moving. Also, these are the first words that I've spoken today, so my voice is a little scratchy. There we go. Alrighty, so I read 36 books, and there was a total of 13,595 pages. So not quite keeping up to my, almost 2 books a day, but there was some chunky books this month. And also there was just a lot of distractions in my life this month too, which is fine. It's living, right? It's living well. The formats that I read these books in were, this is where it's so weird. I had 10 audiobooks, 8 physical books, 12 ebooks, and 17 ARCs, which is just nuts, man. Like, that is twice what I had last month. There were so many new books coming out this month. The same thing I'm pretty sure will show for March, because March I have like 20 new releases coming and there's books getting added all the time. It's just crazy. The subgenres of these books were, I had 14 contemporary, 10 dark, 2 historical, 4 fan fiction, 2 erotic, 3 fantasy, and 1 sci-fi. And the ratings of these, as I stated, I had 2 6-star books. There was 10 5-star books, 5 4.5-star books, 14 4-star books, 3 3.5, and 2 3 stars. So those are all of the stats there. Let us get into my top 5 favorite reads. I forgot to say this at the top of the video, so I'll throw it in here in the middle. I don't actually go over every single book that I've read in this video. It would take me far too long. I like to talk far too much. So I do weekly wrap-ups where I talk about every book that I read. You can find those in a playlist up here. There's one for every week of the year, and I actually have those going back 2.5 years. So if you'd ever really like to binge, you can see every book the Book Refuge has read going back to 2020 pretty much. Well, was it midway through 2020 I started doing that? I'm not sure, but yeah, there's a lot in my history there. So this will just be my top 5. I don't usually talk about a least favorite book. I know I did that last month because there was one I just really wanted to bitch about, but I don't have that case this month. There was nothing that I hated so much that I need to complain about it. So we're back to just talking about our favorites. So let's talk about my top 5 reads. I go kind of chronologically when I do these, not for any particular reason. It's just how I organize it. So I want to talk about Dom by S.J. Tilley, which totally forgot that I own that one and can hold it up. So there we go. I love this series, and as I say when these come up, it's because they're very strangely like comforting / nostalgic for me, because they take place kind of where I live. This one takes place in Chicago, but the first 2 take place in Minneapolis, and they have to do with the mafia there, and they actually go visit Fargo to kill someone in one of them. I know I bring it up every time and I don't care, because Fargo doesn't get mentioned in books ever except to like make fun of it, so I have to bring it up. But this one, Dom, is about Dom and Val. And Val is actually the half-sister of King, and she's his half-sister in the way that she's the daughter of like his dad from a mistress. So Val hasn't had the same, charmed life that perhaps King and his sister have had. And she's just trying to make it through her life, right? And so this book begins actually with her on a flight And she ends up bumping into this guy named Dom, and they share a plane ride, and then they have a little tryst in the airport, actually. It's kind of a hot one, I'll say that. And they begin this instant connection, really. Like, they start texting each other, and they end up running into each other in Vegas a few weeks later, and then getting accidentally hitched in Vegas. The only thing is, it isn't so accidental. Dom pretty much planned it because he wants to be a part of the Alliance. This series is called the Alliance series, by the way. And her brother, King, as well as Nero, his associate, are big parts of the Alliance, and he wants to be in it, and they have rejected him because they don't trust him. They don't want him to be a part of it. And so he's like, well, I'm going to marry my way into it. That's what I'm going to do. So as I said, he marries Val, and Val thinks this is an instant connection, and she's feeling so like swept away by this romance. And so to find out that it was all to get to her brother, she feels devastated. But the thing is, Dom, he really just does want her as well as wanting the Alliance. And so he's like, girl, there's more going on here than just that. And he goes about kind of proving it to her in interesting ways, right? Including some tattooing that she doesn't necessarily agree to. So just keep that in mind. But this is wild. These books are all about overly possessive men, but there are also a bit of teddy bears, right? Like, this isn't an overly dark series. I'll say that. Now, I always have to qualify that because it's still mafia, okay? Like, don't expect it to be sunshine and roses, but it definitely focuses more on the men being obsessed with the women. Nero was my least favorite, but then I loved King and I loved Dom even more. I've been listening to the audios of these. There is only one left. There's Hans, but I like really, really want to read Hans, so I don't know if I'll be able to wait for the audiobook. But yeah, I loved these. So this one has a plus size heroine. I would consider it like brother's rival. There's a bit of a secret identity in the beginning of this one, and we do have an age gap as well. So definitely check this series out. Start with Nero and just have the best time. All right, next up, there was the new release by my queen, Sophia Lark, and this is Love Contract. Now, this is the first in the Love Contract series, and guys, I loved this book. This was a complete, like, I mean, I don't want this to scare anyone away, but this was a complete, like, change to what Sophie has written lately, and I couldn't have loved it more. I was so surprised by this story, and I think this will be a great in to a lot of people who don't like dark romance, or don't like mafia romance, or didn't like Grimstone or even Minx. Like, it's okay. I liked Minx, but it's okay if you didn't. Like, it is definitely for those who like the kinkier, stranger things. I will completely agree with that. So, you know, don't feel bad about it. However, this one is a fake dating. I would kind of tentatively call it that they were like high school enemies, but really this one is a friends to lovers. It really, really is. You'll see if you read it that it started with a blackmail situation, okay? It starts with our hero Sully, who blackmails Theo into helping him with something. So she's an assistant to this gazillionaire, who is this very spoiled, like, not very thoughtful boss, and he's really kept her kind of like in a box for a very long time. So it's not the best relationship she has with her boss. He really takes advantage of her, and she has dreams of being a chef, and this boss has kept her dangling with the promise that someday he would help her get a restaurant started, but really he just wants to keep her under his thumb forever. And again, Sully knew her in high school, and he is in real estate, but he kind of like wants to get out of it in a way. He's made a couple bad investments, and he's not, you know, he's struggling basically. And he has a dad who has recently got out of prison and is an alcoholic, and he has a brother who's an actor who is very fun. The next two books will actually be about those two. This is going to be a trilogy, which is very exciting. Very excited about it. So much fun. And so anyway, he does blackmail Theo into helping him. And in the beginning, she's so resistant to this because they didn't get along in high school. And she has a lot of like bad thoughts about him from then. But honestly, it was really petty, you know, young people stuff. And very quickly, they realize they have a lot in common. They've actually both lost their mothers. His mother was murdered. Her mother just recently died of, not super recently, but recently died of cancer. And that's actually why she had to give up her culinary dreams, because she wanted to be there for her mom. So this book ended up being so much more like touching than I was expecting. I will tell you that, like, from the pitch and from the artwork that I had seen, which of course the artwork is absolutely stunning because we have Lena doing the artwork. Like, here's a picture of Sully. He's wonderful. And let's show you. Here's Theo. So pretty. So I thought this was going to be more rom-com. And, you know, you might still see a few people saying that it's a rom-com, but I want to caution you, like, it's not. Like, Sophie's saying it has rom-com vibes. It does. It has some scenes that give you the levity you need. But honestly, this was a more, like, serious, like, contemporary that was still fun at the same time. I don't know a way to say it. I kind of have been comparing this to, like, I don't know, it's like hard to compare it to it, but you know how like with like some of Melanie Harlow's books, like they're not full-on rom-coms. They still have touching moments, but they have levity in them. So anyway, we get introduced to these two. This fake dating gets underway, and then Theo's apartment needs to be fumigated, and she's not going to be able to be there for a week. And so Sully is like, well, of course you have to come stay with me to keep up with appearances. And he lives closer to her office and everything. So this becomes a forced proximity, like they live together. And I love how that happens. So now it becomes a roommate situation as well. So yeah, and as we just get to know them, and like I said, we see how alike they are, and they bond over that. And that's why I said this quickly becomes a friends situation. Like the animosity part, like that's why this isn't even really an enemies to lovers. It's really not. There's that animosity from high school that honestly is mostly on Theo's side because she always felt like Sully was kind of a bully to her, but it's very quickly gone. And then we get introduced particularly to Merrick, who is the father, who is staying in the pool house at this. They have this rundown estate that used to be just so beautiful. And a big part of the reason why Sully needs to have this business deal go through, this real estate deal, is that he wants to make sure that his father can live on the estate forever. You know, they owe money on it, and he wants his dad to be taken care of. And my favorite part, and I go into great in depth in this in my weekly review where I read this, like I talk about this book for like 20 minutes, so I won't take too much time now. But my absolute favorite thing in this was Merrick. Like, I know it's not the only favorite part. I love the romance. The romance is great, but like I love what's happening with Merrick. Like I said, he's an alcoholic at the beginning, but his sons, particularly Sully, they still love him so much. This isn't a case of like, oh, it's the deadbeat alcoholic dad that he's dragging my life down. No, there's a heartbreaking story of what happened to his mother. You know, I mentioned his mother was murdered. That led Merrick's dad to do something drastic, which led to him going to prison, as I said. And he's an alcoholic, and he is heartbroken. He's a heartbroken widower who just misses the love of his life. His wife was an actress. He was a stuntman. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about Merrick, but I loved him, and I loved that pretty much everything Sully is doing in this book, like, is to take care of his dad and his brother at the same time too. Like I said, we'll meet his brother, Reese, I think is the brother's name. And he's a lot of our comic relief in this. Like, Reese is really the comic relief in this one. I can't wait for his book. It'll be so funny. They're twins, by the way, too. Yeah, Sully and Reese are twins. So that leads to some interesting situations. We'll just say that for sure. So yeah, at the end of the day, this reads almost, again, I'm taking the liberty of this. This reads almost like a small town romance, even though like it's in you know, California and involves a big city, like they become almost their own little small town because she's living at his house and she brings so much life back into this house, and her conversations with Merrick are just so touching, and like, oh, I just loved it so much. And so like, yeah, Reese and Merrick and Sully and Theo just felt like a found family, even though, you know, 3 of them are family. Like, she felt very like found in their family, and it gave me all the best vibes, you guys. It was so adorable. And this is the slowest burn I've ever read from Sophie. The sexual tension is amazing, but I just felt like it had such a like finer hand than the last 2 books of hers. Like, straight up, if you didn't like the sex or the eroticism of those, like if they were just weren't your thing, this is completely a different page. It's much more subtle, it's much more slow burn in building, and it was just beautiful. So that's why this was my first 6-star read. And as I say every time, I don't care. I'm a simp for Sophie. She's tattooed on my skin. Her words are tattooed on my skin. So you take that for what you want, completely. But I loved this book, and I feel like I hold up because I've been honest about which of her books I don't like. Grimstone. Did not care for it. But this one, I totally did. So this was a 6-star read for me. This was only really like a 2 on the spice scale, as I said. Of course, the sexual tension is absolutely there, but again, if you like small town romance, if you like fake dating, if you like more friends to lovers, I think this is absolutely up your alley. So if you've never tried a Sophie Lark, if none of the books I've described have sounded good to you, please try this one. Like, for real, try this one. The link will be down below for you to snag this book. And honestly, look how pretty this cover is. Look how pretty it is. It's just beautiful. I love it. All right. Next up is my other like favorite author right now, and this was my other 6-star read. This is Jump on 3 by J. Wolfe. So this is book 3 in her Savage Academy series, and I did say this on the weekly wrap-up, you know, with P.S. You're Intolerable, which was my last favorite book by her, my favorite book of 2023, you could just read that one as a standalone. You absolutely can just jump into that book. You won't miss a beat. You'll be totally fine. You can't do that with this one. It's one of the ones that the reason why it's so good is the buildup from the previous book, right? So with this one, you at least have to read the second book. And if you're going to read the second book, you might as well read the first book. These are a new adult dark romance series. This one is probably like, this one isn't super, super dark. It does deal with mafia adjacent things, which is cool. I really hope maybe Julia Wolf will go towards some mafia. That'd be super cool. I'd be here for it. But the reason why you need to watch the first one is that this one has twin sisters, and I think, is it Delia's the first sister? I honestly can't remember her name right now, but Evelyn is the name of this heroine, and she is neurodivergent. She's on the autism scale. Julia Wolf had a couple, she had sensitivity readers for this, and honestly, in my opinion, as like not having autism, you know, I can only go off of what I've observed and of those I know in my life. This is one of the best portrayals that like I've read, where they had it, you know, I said this to my other review, like this next to like Ian Mackenzie is my favorite book with neurodivergent rep that I've read, because it just felt so real. Like, it was done so well. So Evelyn is our heroine. She is a swimmer. She has survived a lot of bullying in her life, and she is being bullied right now. This is not a bully romance, though, because her love interest is not her bully at all. He's totally not. But she is being bullied, and she's not saying anything about it, because previously her sister and her left a previous boarding school because Evelyn was bullied so hard she almost died, actually. And so the bullying she's getting at this school, like, is so mild compared to what she had before that she just takes it, but it's still really shitty what's happening to her. It's awful. Our hero is Ivan, who's also a swimmer, and he also, you know, unfortunately for him, this puts him in a tight spot. Her sister had a crush on him before. He's friends with their group, and when he turned down her sister, that, you know, all of that means that, like, Evelyn would, like, never go for someone that her sister used to like, even though her sister has a boyfriend now in this one. Like I said, the last book was her sister's. And she's just, like, would never see Ivan that way, or she thinks she wouldn't. But Ivan, he likes Evelyn a lot. like I said, he's also a swimmer, so they're on the swim bus a lot of the time together when they go to meets. And, you know, she sees him in the pool in before practices and after practices and stuff. And yeah, he just starts, you know, putting himself around her and observing her, and he just loves her. He thinks she's so cute and fun, and he wants to spend time with her, which, you know, not a lot of people like do want to do that. But for Evelyn, some of that can be very overwhelming. And again, like, she sees him as like having been her sisters, even though like her sister's literally with someone else that she wants to be with. And so Evelyn just has all these rules in her. And so Ivan, who he is actually from Russia, his father, though it's not explicitly said, it seems like his father might be, you know, he's definitely a very wealthy, like, oligarch from Russia for sure, and he owns a lot of businesses. And in California, where they are, his father partially owns a nightclub, and Ivan has to go there 3 nights a week and like learn the business and work it with the co-owner, who, if you've read other Julia Wolf books, he shows up in some of those as well, which is kind of cool. When he was in when he was in college, I think he was in Savage U is where I saw him, but this is a few years after that one. And Evelyn starts wondering where Ivan goes every night, and so one night she follows him, and she ends up meeting some of the guys who run it, and they really like her. So that's really fun. But anyway, so Evelyn, you know, she struggles with, you know, how to have a boyfriend and how to, you know, deal with like the physical aspects, because for her, she really has to have a connection before she wants the physical stuff to happen, which again, if you read book 2, you'll see a bit of her journey happening with that. But once she is engaged, like once she is like ready, she's then very blunt, and she's like, well, I like this, I want this, let's do this, let's have sex, I want this. And Ivan's like, I just love that she tells me everything that she wants. So this one is also a very slow burn between the two of them, and they have a lot of challenges to overcome. And it was just really beautiful to watch them do that, because it stretches both of them so much. And yeah, Julia Wolf, she just has a way, you guys, of just ripping my heart out, but also making me so happy at the same time. And I could not put this book down. I was absolutely addicted. I love her stories so much. Oh, I love her stories so much. And if you've never read a Julia Wolf, well, again, I don't suggest you start with this one. I recently made a video about Julia Wolf where I talk about her entire backlist. So in that video, you can find out the places I suggest you start with her books. But you could just start with P.S. You're Intolerable if you want to. If you haven't, you know, read that yet, you could absolutely do that. But I just love her storytelling and the way that she writes such fabulous characters, and they just feel so real to me. And that's when I love it. When they don't feel like a caricature, they feel so real, and I love it. So yeah, this one was a 6-star read. This one is new adult because it's at a academy. It's a you know, prep school kind of. There is disability / neurodivergent rep. There's forced proximity. She's a virgin. I would consider Ivan kind of like an alpha mellow. That's what I put him as on mine, that he's kind of like an alpha mellow, and I love it. Okay, now we go to another mafia romance, and this one is Roman by Melanie Moreland. So it was actually really hard to choose. I read both Aldo and Roman this month. I should have said, Jump on 3 comes out on March 7th, so it's coming soon. Aldo comes out on March 6th, so this will be out soon. Roman comes out on March 6th. Aldo is already out. You can read it right now. But Men of the Falls is a duet that is like about a Canadian casino and the guys who run it, who are a little bit involved in organized crime. Like, definitely Roman, we see a lot more of that aspect in it, whereas in Aldo is Roman's right-hand man, and he is much more solely focused on the casino and the running of that. I actually read Aldo twice this month because I had the arc of Aldo, and then I had the audiobook review of it too. I can't wait to listen to Roman as well because it was just so good. But Aldo really kind of sets up everything really well. And we get lots of glimpses at Roman and his brother Luca, and we're just like, ooh, I want to know more about them type of thing, right? So then Roman, now he's the head of this, he's the top guy, and at the beginning of this one, he has a woman who, her name is Marianne, who owes him some money, and she owes him a lot of money, and she tries to bargain her sister, whose name is Effie, for the money she owes, and he is absolutely disgusted. He throws her out of his office. He's like, take that damn idea somewhere else. I don't peddle in flesh. That's awful. You owe me money, and if you don't give it to me, you'll pay the consequences. So like, he will do some breaking of bones or some killing if people owe him money. So that's the dark side of him that he has. Now, he ends up going to meet this sister because he has a suspicion that Marianne is going to do something bad. He doesn't quite know, but he goes to see Effie, who she actually owns this diner / bakery, and he warns her, if your sister asks for help, say no. And that's all he says. So she's like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, that's all I'm saying. Just say no. Now, this all happens in the first like 2-3 chapters of this book because it's the setup for everything else, right? So like the next day, 2 days later, Marianne shows up with the money and drops it at Roman's feet and is like, we're done. We don't owe each other anything else anymore. And she hightails it. And he's like, where did she get this money? Where did she get it? He knows that it had something to do with Effie, right? Because she's the one who owns a business. What did he do? Well, he had given Effie actually a business card of his that has a tracking device in it. And so he looks at it, and the tracker shows that she's still at her home. Like, her home is like right near her diner. But then it like cuts out, and he's like, what the fuck happened? So he dives in, does some digging, and it turns out that him telling the sister, take your wares somewhere else, she went and sold her sister to someone else to get the money. And Roman, he doesn't fully know why he feels bad, but we know why he feels bad. He's not a soulless monster. No matter what he tells himself, we know he's not a soulless monster. And so he's like, I can't let this woman be put into sex trafficking because of me. Like, he blames himself, even though it's Marianne who did it. He's like, I put that idea in her head. And so he goes about rescuing Effie. Now, he ends up rescuing her. As I said, this is just the beginning of the book. And there's no place safe for her to go, because even though he rescued her, he, puts it out there that she's his, there are still some that want revenge for him, losing him money. And he's like, I'm not the one you lost money to. It's Marianne who did this. But he takes Effie, who's very injured and hurt right now, takes her to his hotel and puts her up in a suite and is going to keep her safe. And it ends up being a soft kidnapping, as we call it, because he's like, you can't go back to work. You can't go back there because they're going to want revenge for me rescuing you. And I'm sorry you're in this position now, but you are. So you're just going to have to deal with it type of situation. So yeah, that's the situation that we find ourselves in at the beginning of this. Is that now she's being held by him. And of course, he's going to be very attracted to this sweet, tiny, feisty woman and never want to let her go. So I loved this. It is, as I said about Aldo, I'll say it here, like this series, this duet really reminds me of like Neva Altaj's type of writing. And I make that comparison only because like everybody loves her right now. And I just really think it's a good kind of comparison between the two. And they're also not overly mafia dark. Like I said, those are some dark topics that I just talked about, but they're not like overly sit upon. Like, it's much more about the romance than it is about the darker sides of it. So I gave this one 5 stars. This one I said had an alpha male. It's mafia. It's slight captor-captive. And it also has an age gap too. Is in there. So all those good things. And then the last one I want to mention, I just finished yesterday, and it was tough to pick like which one I wanted to go with, but you know what? I had a great time with this book, so we're throwing it in my top 5. So Small Town Swoon comes out on March 4th, See, I told you, I read a lot of arcs this month, so those are the ones that we're getting on here. All of these except the first one were all arcs that are my favorites. So Small Town Swoon is book 4 in the Cherry Tree Harbor series. This one is about Dashiell Buckley, who is an actor. And in the beginning of this, we see that he wants to get into more serious acting like they do, but he's having trouble getting into that because he played a character that's basically on like a Baywatch type show. So he played this hunky guy who wears tiny shorts and has big muscles, and you know, it was great. Like, he makes lots of money, and his siblings call it the Bulge Bucks, because that is what his character's name was, is Bulge. But he wants to get into more serious things, and nobody wants to hire him for that because, oh, you are just the hunky airhead type guy, right? But he goes home to Cherry Tree Harbor for a month because one of his brothers is getting married. I believe this one is, which marriage is this one? I don't even remember. Is it Veronica and his brother? I don't remember. I don't remember which one because 3 of his brothers are paired up now already. But it's someone's marriage is happening. I think it's the oldest brother because the one was a marriage of convenience. So they're already married. And the other one, they aren't even like engaged yet. So it must be the first brother. But he goes to stay home for a month so that he can visit and then be there for the wedding, and then he'll go back and try to decide what he's doing with his career. At the same time, we have our heroine, Ari, who her family owns the diner that's in this town. She actually has dreams of, she actually went to like culinary school, but she got like intimidated away from it from, one of the guys there was just awful to her. I think there was probably partially a relationship between them, and he was so bad to her. It was awful. Blah, blah, blah. And so she doesn't like Dash, even though she says she doesn't, because when she was 16 and he was, I think, like 19 or 20, she made a move on him. She like crawled into his bed, and he definitely wanted her, but like it was in his dad's house. She's his sister's best friend, and she was underage, and so he didn't do anything. And she's like held a grudge against him all this time for not like making a move with her. So it's a little bit funny because it's like, girl, what did you expect the poor boy to do? Okay, like he can't do anything with you. Okay, like you are a baby. So she holds a bit of a grudge, but very quickly in the beginning, we get over that, and her parents actually go on a vacation because her dad has been having a little bit of like health stuff, and so she's like, go on a vacation, I'll handle the diner and everything, it's fine. And she also works part-time at Xander's bar, which is, Xander is the brother from Hideaway Heart, which I love that one. And yeah, so she works part-time there, and so Dash comes in, and he's, like, teasing her, and she ends up cutting her hand while she's chopping, like, lemons or something, like, really badly, so badly that she needs to go to the hospital. And Dash just absolutely is so kind. Like, she is, like, mad at him for never making a move on her, but he's such a good guy, you guys. Like, this really is Small Town Swoon. It's so swoony because he takes her to the ER. She, like, doesn't want him there, but she's scared of needles, so, like, he holds her hand while she gets her hand sewn up. And then the next day, when she's supposed to get the diner open, he's not doing anything while he's in town. So he shows up, and he's like, girl, I've washed dishes, I've waited tables, I was in LA trying to make it, like, let me help you. So he does. He helps her with some stuff during the day since her hand's not working as well. And basically, like, they become friends again. Like, this is reignited. And he just volunteers always to help with things. And he's also supposed to be working on himself to become more serious. And she starts inviting him over. She'll make him a fancy meal, basically, and then show him a romantic movie to get him in touch with his romantic hero side, which leads them to watching all the good ones. And it leads to this really beautiful line at the end because they've watched these romantic movies where that means some of them have HEAs and some of them are just romantic. They're not romance movies, right? We know the difference. Melanie Harlow even brings it up, the difference between a movie with romance and a romance movie. And it leads to this beautiful line at the end where he says, not all romances have a happily ever after, but ours does. And I'm just like, that's so simple, but it was so cute too, because they do have like a struggle because it's like he's going to be going back in a month and like she's never going to leave. She loves being here, but she does have dreams to try different things, but they still would be like in Cherry Tree Harbor type thing. So anyway, I thought it was great. I did give this one 5 stars. It's just so sweet. And yeah, that will be out March 4th. So like I said, I have links to everything down below. I know a lot of these will be like pre-orders for you because they're not coming till March, but they're coming very soon. So definitely check them out. Thank you so much for watching this. It means so much to me for you to check out my channel. Make sure you like this, comment down below, leave me a heart for Valentine's. I know it's past, but leave me a heart down there. Check out my Etsy shop if you want to check out some of the cool things I have there. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.